The pouch of gold landed on Ivy's workbench with a heavy thud. She looked up from the herbs she'd been grinding, her hands stilling on the mortar. Lady Ashworth stood in the doorway of the castle's healing quarters, her silk gown immaculate, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "That's 200 gold pieces," the noblewoman said. "More than a healer like you would earn in a lifetime." Ivy wiped her hands on her apron, eyeing the pouch, but not touching it. "And what exactly would I be earning it for?" "Leaving." Lady Ashworth stepped into the room, her perfume overwhelming the gentle scent of dried lavender. "Tonight," quietly, "before the king returns from his hunt." "I see. I doubt you do." The lady's smile didn't waver, but her eyes were cold. "You've been here 3 months, Miss Thornwood. 3 months of tending to servants and mixing poultices. Hardly essential work. But lately, you've caught the king's attention, and that simply won't do?" Ivy's chest tightened, though she kept her expression neutral. She knew what Lady Ashworth meant. The king had started visiting her healing quarters, at first with questions about remedies, then with longer conversations, then with looks that lingered in ways that made her pulse race. She'd told herself it meant nothing. Kings didn't fall for common healers. Whatever warmth she saw in his amber eyes was her imagination, nothing more. "His Majesty has been kind to me," Ivy said carefully, "as he is to all his staff." "Don't play naive. It insults us both." Lady Ashworth moved closer, her heels clicking against the stone floor. "The king needs a proper mate. Someone of noble blood, political value, appropriate breeding, not a peasant girl who mixes herbs for a living." The words stung more than they should have. Ivy had heard variations of them her whole life, from the villagers who'd distrusted her healing gift, from the lords who'd looked through her like she wasn't there, from everyone who'd ever made it clear that her worth was measured in what she could provide, not who she was. "I'm not trying to become his mate," she said quietly. "I'm just doing my job." "Then you won't mind doing it somewhere else?" Lady Ashworth pushed the gold pouch closer. 200 pieces. Enough to establish yourself anywhere you'd like. All you have to do is be gone by morning." Ivy stared at the gold. It was more money than she'd ever seen in one place. More than her mother had earned in her entire career as a village healer before the sickness took her. With that much gold, Ivy could open her own practice, buy a small cottage, build a life without depending on anyone's charity. All she had to do was walk away. "And if I refuse?" Lady Ashworth's smile thinned. "Then I'll make sure your position here becomes untenable. I have influence in this court, Miss Thornwood. It would be easy to spread rumours, suggest improprieties, question your competence. By the time I'm finished, no noble house in the kingdom would hire you." The threat hung in the air between them, ugly and undeniable. Ivy opened her mouth to respond, to accept, probably, because what choice did she have, when a voice cut through the room like thunder. "Lady Ashworth!" They both turned. The Lycan king stood in the doorway, still in his hunting leathers, his dark hair windswept, and his amber eyes blazing with barely contained fury. He must have returned early. He must have heard everything. Lady Ashworth went pale. "Your Majesty, I was just—" "I know exactly what you were doing." He stepped into the room, and the temperature seemed to drop. "You were threatening a member of my household. You were attempting to bribe her to leave my service. You were making decisions about my life without my knowledge or consent. I was protecting your interests. You were protecting your own." His voice was ice. "You have 3 daughters of marriageable age, Lady Ashworth. Did you think I wouldn't notice your maneuvering?" The arranged encounters, the strategic seating at dinners, the whispered suggestions about suitable matches. The noblewoman's face flushed red. Your Majesty, surely you can see that this girl is beneath— This girl, the king interrupted, has done more good in 3 months than your entire family has done in 3 generations. She saved my stable master's life when your court physicians had written him off. She cured the fever that swept through the servants' quarters when no one else could. She is brilliant, capable, and worth more than every gold piece in that pouch. Ivy's breath caught. He was defending her. The Lycan king, ancient and powerful, and so far above her station she couldn't even see it from here, was defending her to a noblewoman who could destroy her with a word. Leave, Theron commanded. Return to your estate. I'll send word if you're welcome at court again. Lady Ashworth's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Then she gathered her skirts and fled, leaving the pouch of gold behind. Silence filled the healing quarters. Ivy couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The king was looking at her now, his anger fading into something softer, something that made her heart pound against her ribs. I'm sorry, he said. I should have anticipated something like this. The court vultures have been circling since you arrived. It's not your fault, Your Majesty. Theron. He crossed the room, stopping an arm's length away. I've told you before. When we're alone, it's Theron. She swallowed hard. Theron. You didn't have to do that. She was right about one thing. I'm nobody, just a healer. If my presence is causing problems with your court, your presence is the only thing making my court bearable. He reached out, and his fingers brushed her cheek so gently she shivered. Ivy. Look at me. She raised her eyes to his. Golden amber, ancient and warm, looking at her like she was something precious. She offered you gold to leave, he said softly. 200 pieces. Yes. How much would it take to make you stay? The question stole her breath. What? Name your price. His thumb traced her cheekbone, feather-light. Whatever you want. Whatever would convince you to remain here. Gold, land, a title. Anything. I don't want your money. Then what do you want? The words hovered on her tongue, dangerous and impossible. She wanted him. She wanted the way he looked at her, the way he listened when she spoke, the way he made her feel like she mattered. She wanted things a common healer had no right to want. I want to know why, she whispered. Why you care whether I stay or go. Why you're standing here offering me kingdoms when you could have any woman in the realm. Something shifted in his expression. The careful control cracked, revealing something raw underneath. Because you're my mate, he said. I've known since the moment you walked into my castle. I've been trying to give you time, trying not to frighten you, trying to let you see me as more than a king before I told you. But if there's any chance you're about to walk out those gates— Mate? The word came out strangled. The other half of my soul, the woman I've waited 300 years to find. His hand cradled her face like she was made of glass. So, I'll ask you again, Ivy Thornwood. What would it take to make you stay? Ivy stared at him, her world rearranging itself around this single impossible moment. The gold still sat on her workbench. 200 pieces. A lifetime of security. She didn't look at it. Ask me again tomorrow, she breathed, and the day after. Keep asking me, and maybe I'll figure out how to believe this is real. Something blazed in his amber eyes, hope, fierce and barely contained. I'll ask you every day for the rest of your life if that's what it takes." He leaned closer, his forehead touching hers, and Ivy closed her eyes and let herself believe. He asked her the next morning. Ivy was sorting dried rosemary when he appeared in her doorway, still dressed for court, clearly having escaped some obligation to find her. His amber eyes swept over her face like he was checking that she was real, that she hadn't vanished in the night. "Stay?" The single word held a weight that made her chest ache. "I'm still here," she said softly. "Good." He smiled, small but genuine, and left without another word. He asked her again at midday, finding her in the servants' quarters where she was checking on a kitchen boy's sprained wrist. He waited until she'd finished wrapping the bandage, patient as stone, before catching her eye across the room. "Stay?" "Still here." He asked her at dinner, appearing beside her table in the servants' hall and ignoring the shocked stares of everyone around them. He asked her at sunset, when she was gathering herbs from the castle garden. He asked her in the corridor outside her quarters, his voice low and private, meant only for her. Every time she gave him the same answer. "Still here." A week passed. Then 2. The court whispered. Of course they did. Lady Ashworth's banishment had sent shockwaves through the nobility, and everyone knew it had something to do with the king's healer. But no one dared say anything to Ivy's face. Not anymore. Theron had made it clear, through word and action and the weight of his authority, that she was under his protection. Anyone who threatened her would answer to him. It should have made her uncomfortable. Instead, it made her feel something she hadn't felt since her mother died. Safe. "You're staring at me," Theron said. They were in the library, 2 weeks after Lady Ashworth's visit. He'd started joining her in the evenings, claiming he needed to review documents in the quiet. She suspected he simply wanted to be near her. She didn't mind. "I'm trying to figure you out," she admitted. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Arrogance, cruelty, the things people say about Lycan kings." She set down the book she'd been pretending to read. "Instead, you ask permission before entering my healing quarters. You remember the names of every servant in this castle. You've asked me to stay every single day for 2 weeks, and not once have you demanded an answer." "Would demanding help?" "No." "Then what would be the point?" He leaned back in his chair, firelight playing across his features. "I told you, Ivy. I've waited 300 years. I can wait longer." "But why?" The question that had been burning in her chest finally escaped. "You're a king. You could have anyone. Women more beautiful, more powerful, more appropriate. Why me?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "Do you know what it's like to live for centuries? To watch everyone around you age and die while you remain unchanged? To sit on a throne surrounded by people who want your power, your favor, your wealth, but never you?" Ivy shook her head slowly. "It's lonely." He said it simply, without self-pity. "I've had lovers, allies, people who claimed to care for me, but no one ever just saw me. Theron, not the king, not the power, just the man." "And you think I see you?" "I know you do." His amber eyes held hers, intense and vulnerable. "The first time we spoke, do you remember? I came to you with a headache that no one else could cure. And you looked at me, this ancient king asking for help, and you said, 'Sit down, Your Majesty. You look exhausted.'" The memory surfaced, sharp and clear. "You stared at me like I'd grown a second head." "Because no one had ever noticed." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "In 300 years, Not one person had ever looked past the crown and seen that I was tired. But you did, in 30 seconds. Something cracked in Ivy's chest. She'd thought nothing of it at the time, had simply seen a man who needed rest and said so. She hadn't realized it meant anything. "Tell me about your life," Theron said. "Before you came here. I want to know." The request caught her off guard. People didn't usually ask about her past. They asked about her skills, her remedies, what she could do for them, not where she came from. "There's not much to tell." She pulled her knees up onto the chair, tucking her feet beneath her. "I grew up in a village 3 days' ride from here. My mother was a healer. She taught me everything she knew." "Was?" "She died 5 years ago." The old grief stirred, familiar and faded. Plague came through the village. She saved dozens of people before she caught it herself. By the time I realized she was sick, it was too late. "I'm sorry." "It was a long time ago." She forced a small smile. "After she died, I couldn't stay. The villagers had always been suspicious of our healing, thought it was too close to witchcraft. Without her protection, I wasn't safe. So I travelled, worked in noble houses when I could, moved on when I had to. Until you came here." "Until I came here." She met his eyes, something warm unfurling in her chest. "It's the first place that's felt like home since I lost her." Theron rose from his chair and crossed the room, kneeling beside her seat. She was getting used to this, the way he made himself smaller, less intimidating whenever he wanted her to feel safe. "Then stay," he said softly. "Not because I'm asking, not because of the mate bond, or my protection, or anything I can offer you. Stay because this is home." "Theron, I know you don't trust it yet. I know 300 years means nothing when you've spent 5 years waiting for every good thing to be taken away." His hand found hers, warm and careful. "But I'm not going anywhere, Ivy. I will ask you every day until you believe me. And if you never believe me, if you decide tomorrow or next year or in 50 years that you need to leave, I'll let you go. I'll tear my own heart out and let you go, because what you want matters more than what I need." Her eyes burned. No one had ever said anything like that to her. No one had ever put her wants above their own, asked nothing in return, offered everything without condition. "You're making it very hard to keep my guard up," she whispered. "Good." His thumb traced her knuckles. "Your guard is exhausting. I'd rather you put that energy towards something more pleasant." "Like what?" "Like telling me what herbs you need from the market. Like letting me show you the library's restricted section. Like having breakfast with me tomorrow without looking at the door every 5 minutes to make sure you can escape." A surprised laugh escaped her. "I don't do that." "You absolutely do. I've counted." His eyes crinkled with warmth. 17 times last Tuesday." "That's—" She stopped, flushing. "I didn't realize you noticed." "I notice everything about you." He lifted her hand, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Get some rest. I'll see you in the morning." He left her alone in the library, firelight dancing on the walls, her hand still tingling where his lips had touched. She was falling for him, slowly, inevitably, like a leaf drifting on a stream. And for the first time, she thought maybe, just maybe, she didn't want to fight it. The nightmare came on the 3rd week. Ivy woke, gasping, her mother's face still burning behind her eyelids. The dream was always the same. Her mother lying in their small cottage, skin grey with fever, reaching for Ivy's hand with fingers that trembled. "You have to save them. Promise me you'll save them." She'd promised, She'd spent 3 days running between sick beds, mixing every remedy she knew, pouring everything she had into saving her neighbours while her mother slipped away in an empty room. By the time Ivy returned to her side, it was over. Her mother had died alone because Ivy had been too busy saving strangers. The guilt never faded. It just learned to hide. A knock at her door made her flinch. "Ivy?" Theron's voice, rough with concern. "I heard. Are you all right?" She should send him away, should compose herself, rebuild her walls, pretend she was fine. Instead, she heard herself say, "Come in." The door opened. Theron stood in the corridor, dressed in nothing but sleep trousers, his chest bare, his hair dishevelled. He'd clearly been woken from sleep and had come running without thought. His amber eyes swept over her, the tears on her cheeks, the trembling of her hands, the way she'd curled into herself on the bed. "Nightmare," she managed. He didn't ask permission. He crossed the room in 3 strides, sat on the edge of her bed, and pulled her into his arms. She should have resisted, should have maintained some distance, some pretense of control. But he was warm and solid and there, and she was so tired of being strong. She broke. The tears came in a flood she couldn't stop, sobs racking her body while Theron held her against his chest and said nothing. He didn't try to fix it, didn't offer platitudes or solutions. He just held her, one hand stroking her hair, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. When the storm finally passed, she felt hollowed out, empty, but somehow lighter. "Do you want to tell me about it?" Theron asked softly. She should say no. This was the part of herself she kept hidden, the wound that never healed. But the words came anyway, pulled out by the safety of his arms and the darkness of the room. "My mother," she whispered. "I dream about her dying, about how I wasn't there." "You said the plague took her." "It did, but I could have saved her." The admission scraped her throat like broken glass. "I had the remedy. I knew how to treat it. But there were so many sick, and she told me to help them first. She made me promise." Theron's arms tightened around her. "I saved 47 people that week. 47 strangers who got to live because of what my mother taught me." Her voice cracked. "And I let her die alone in an empty room because I was too busy keeping my promise to sit with her at the end." The silence that followed was heavy with her confession. She waited for the judgment, the reassurance that would ring hollow, the words people always said when they didn't understand. "Look at me." She lifted her head. Theron's amber eyes were fierce, burning with something that stole her breath. "You didn't let her die. You did exactly what she wanted, what she needed you to do. A healer who abandons 47 dying patients to sit vigil isn't honoring her mother's legacy. She's destroying it. But she was alone. She knew where you were." His hand cupped her face, thumb wiping away a tear. "She knew you were saving lives with the gift she gave you. Do you really think she'd rather have watched those people die just so she could hold your hand?" Ivy's chest ached. She'd never thought of it that way. 5 years of guilt, 5 years of wondering if she'd made the wrong choice, and no one had ever said, "Your mother raised a healer who saved 47 people while barely out of childhood," Theron continued. "She raised someone brave enough to keep a promise even when it broke her heart. She raised you, Ivy, and I have to believe she died proud." The tears came again, but different this time, cleaner, like rain washing away something rotten. "I've never told anyone that," she admitted, "about not being there. I couldn't. People would have." "People would have what?" Judged you for saving lives? Blamed you for honoring your mother's dying wish? His voice hardened. Those people are fools, and their opinions mean nothing. They mean something when you have no one else. You have me now. The words settled into her chest, warm and certain. I don't deserve. Don't. The command was gentle but absolute. Don't tell me what you don't deserve. I've watched you for months, Ivy. I've seen you work through exhaustion to save a stable hand no one else cared about. I've seen you give your own food to hungry servants. I've seen you carry guilt that would have crushed a lesser person and still get up every morning and help people anyway. He shifted, turning her face so she couldn't look away. You are the most extraordinary woman I've ever met, and I have met thousands over 300 years. You are kind and brave and brilliant, and I will spend the rest of my life telling you so until you believe it. Theron, I love you. The words fell into the silence like stones into still water. I know it's too soon. His voice was rough, barely controlled. I know you're not ready, but I need you to know that this isn't about the mate bond or some ancient magic telling me you belong to me. I love you. The woman who told me I looked tired, the woman who argues with me about herb classifications, the woman who cried in my arms tonight and trusted me with a wound she's never shown anyone else. Ivy couldn't breathe. Her heart hammered against her ribs, too fast, too hard. You don't have to say it back, he continued. You don't have to say anything. I needed you to know. Before you made any decisions about staying or going, I needed you to know what you mean to me. She stared at him. This ancient king, bare-chested in her room at midnight, confessing his love like it was the simplest thing in the world. Like she was worth loving. Like she wasn't a broken healer carrying 5 years of guilt and a lifetime of never being enough. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be what you need. You already are. He leaned forward, his forehead resting against hers. Just be here. Just stay. That's all I need. That's everything. She closed her eyes, breathing him in. Pine and wood smoke and something wild that made her pulse race. Kiss me, she breathed. He went still. Ivy. I'm not saying it back. Not yet. But I need... She couldn't finish the sentence. Didn't know how to explain the desperate ache in her chest. The need to feel something other than grief and guilt and fear. He understood anyway. His lips met hers, soft and careful, like she was something precious. She grabbed his shoulders and pulled him closer, deepening the kiss, pouring everything she couldn't say into the press of her mouth against his. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his amber eyes blazed in the darkness. Stay with me tonight, she whispered, just to sleep. I don't want to be alone. He answered by pulling her down onto the pillows and wrapping his body around hers, a wall of warmth and safety. She fell asleep in his arms, her guilt quieter than it had been in 5 years. And somewhere in the darkness, she felt the first fragile threads of love take root. The council meeting was supposed to be routine. Ivy learned about it only because a servant came running to her healing quarters, breathless and pale-faced. You need to come, the girl gasped. The Great Hall. Now. They're trying to... The lords are... She didn't wait for the rest. She ran. The Great Hall was packed when she arrived. Nobles, advisors, guards lining the walls. At the center of the room, Theron sat on his throne, his face carved from stone, his amber eyes burning with barely contained rage. And standing before him, Arranged like a tribunal were 5 of the most powerful lords in the kingdom. "Cannot continue, your majesty," one of them was saying. Lord Blackwood, Ivy recognized. Old money, old blood, old prejudices. The kingdom needs stability. It needs an heir, and it needs a queen of appropriate standing. "My standing is not your concern," Theron said coldly. "It is when you're dallying with a peasant healer instead of securing the succession." Another lord stepped forward, younger, crueler, his smile sharp as a blade. "We've been patient. We've waited for this infatuation to pass. But it's been a month, and the girl is still here." Ivy's blood turned to ice. They were talking about her. "We've taken the liberty of arranging alternatives." Lord Blackwood gestured toward the side of the hall, and Ivy's stomach dropped. 3 women stood there, each more beautiful than the last. Noble daughters, clearly, dressed in silk and jewels, their eyes fixed on the throne with calculated hunger. Lady Margaret of House Thornbury, Lady Elise of House Crane, Lady Victoria of House Ashworth. Ashworth. Lady Ashworth's daughter. The woman smiled at Ivy across the hall, sweet and poisonous. "Any of them would make a suitable queen," Lord Blackwood continued. "Any of them would bring alliances, resources, legitimacy. What does your healer bring? Herbs and scandal?" The hall was silent. Every eye in the room had found Ivy, standing frozen in the doorway. She saw pity in some faces, contempt in others, satisfaction in the lords who had orchestrated this humiliation. She should leave. Should slip away before she made things worse, before her presence damaged Theron's standing with his own court. He was a king. He needed alliances, heirs, stability. She was nobody. She had nothing to offer but... Ivy? Theron's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. He was looking at her now, his amber eyes blazing with something fierce and desperate. "Come here." The command was absolute. But more than that, it was a plea. She could refuse, could turn and walk away, save them both the spectacle, let him choose one of the beautiful noblewomen who would give him everything she couldn't. Her feet carried her forward. The crowd parted as she walked, whispers following in her wake. She kept her eyes on Theron, letting his gaze anchor her, letting his steadiness drown out the thundering of her heart. She stopped at the base of his throne. "Your Majesty," she said, and her voice didn't shake. Theron rose. The movement was slow, deliberate, the controlled power of a predator who knew exactly how dangerous he was. He descended the steps until he stood before her, close enough to touch. "These lords believe they can dictate my choices," he said, loud enough for the hall to hear. "They believe that bloodlines and politics matter more than the bond between mates. They believe..." His voice dropped to something deadly, "that I can be manipulated into abandoning the woman I love." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Your Majesty," Lord Blackwood sputtered, "surely you can't mean..." "I mean exactly what I say." Theron turned to face the lords, and even from behind, Ivy could feel the fury radiating from him. "You speak of what the kingdom needs. Let me tell you what I need. I need a partner who sees me, not my crown. I need someone with the courage to tell me I look tired and the compassion to save lives without caring about politics. I need her." He turned back to Ivy, and his expression shifted. The rage melted away, leaving something raw and vulnerable. "But this isn't my choice alone." He took her hands in his, gentle despite the tension vibrating through his frame. "I promised you I would never trap you. that you would always have options. So I'm asking you now, Ivy Thornwood, in front of everyone who thinks you're not enough, in front of every lord who would see you gone and every noble who believes you don't belong. He dropped to one knee. The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. Kings didn't kneel, not to anyone, and certainly not to common-born healers in front of their entire court. "Stay with me," Theron said, his voice rough. "Not because I'm asking. Not because of politics or power or anything I can offer you. Stay because you want to. Because this is home. Because—" His voice cracked. "Because I can't imagine facing another 300 years without you." Ivy stared at him. This ancient, powerful king, on his knees before her, while his court watched in stunned silence, offering her everything and asking for nothing but a choice. The lords were waiting for her to fail, to crumble under the pressure, to reveal herself as the gold digger they believed her to be, to give them ammunition against the king they couldn't control. The noblewomen were waiting for her to step aside, to know her place, to accept that she could never compete with breeding and bloodlines and beauty. The whole room was holding its breath, certain that a peasant healer would do the sensible thing and walk away. They didn't know her at all. "I don't want gold," she said, her voice ringing clear through the hall. "I don't want titles or lands or political alliances. I don't care about bloodlines or standing or what any of you think of me." She pulled Theron to his feet, her hands steady in his. "I want you," she said. "I want the man who asked me every day to stay and never once demanded an answer. I want the king who defended a peasant healer to his own court. I want 300 years and whatever comes after." She rose on her toes and kissed him. The hall exploded. Shouts of protest from the lords, gasps from the nobles, and beneath it all, a growing roar of approval from the servants and guards who had watched their king find happiness for the first time in centuries. Ivy didn't hear any of it. All that existed was Theron's arms around her, Theron's mouth on hers, Theron's heart beating against her chest in a rhythm that matched her own. When they finally broke apart, his amber eyes were blazing. "Is that a yes?" he murmured against her lips. "That's a yes." She smiled, bright and unafraid. "I love you, Theron. I should have said it weeks ago. I love you, and I'm staying, and anyone who doesn't like it can—" He kissed her again, swallowing whatever threat she'd been about to make. Behind them, the lords sputtered their protests into empty air. No one was listening anymore. The bonding ceremony took place 3 days later. Theron had wanted to wait, to give Ivy time to prepare, to let the court settle after the upheaval in the Great Hall. Ivy had refused. "They've had a month to scheme and manipulate," she'd said, her jaw set with determination. "I'm not giving them another day." So here she stood, in a gown of deep green silk that matched her eyes, her hair woven with wildflowers she'd gathered herself. The great hall was packed again, but this time the energy was different. This time she wasn't an intruder. She was the bride. The 5 lords who had tried to force Theron's hand stood in the front row, their faces carved from stone. They'd been commanded to attend, to witness, to watch their schemes crumble to ash. Lady Victoria Ashworth stood among the other noblewomen, her smile brittle as glass. She'd arrived at the castle 3 days ago expecting to become queen. Instead, she would watch a peasant healer take everything she'd believed she deserved. Ivy met her eyes across the hall and smiled. The officiant spoke the ancient words, but Ivy barely heard them. All her attention was fixed on Theron, on the way he looked at her like she was the sun, on the trembling of his hands as he held hers, on the raw devotion in his amber eyes. Do you, Theron, king of the Lycans, claim this woman as your mate? I claim her. His voice rang through the hall, absolute and unwavering. I have claimed her every day since I met her. I will claim her every day until my last breath. And do you, Ivy Thornwood, accept this claim? Do you bind yourself to this male freely, from this day, until your souls return to the stars? Ivy thought of the gold Lady Ashworth had offered her, 200 pieces to disappear. She thought of the lords who had called her worthless, the nobles who had whispered about herbs and scandal, everyone who had ever looked at her and seen nothing. I accept, she said, her voice clear and strong. Freely, completely, without reservation. He asked me to stay, and I'm never leaving. Something blazed in Theron's eyes, joy, relief, a love so fierce it stole her breath. Then by the ancient laws you are bonded, what the fates have joined, let no force tear asunder. Theron pulled her into his arms and kissed her like they were alone, like the hundreds of witnesses didn't exist, like nothing in the world mattered but the two of them. Ivy melted into him, her hands fisting in his formal coat, her heart so full it ached. The hall erupted into cheers. Not everyone. The lords stood silent, the rejected noblewomen clapped with mechanical precision. But the rest of the court, the servants, the guards, the common folk who had been allowed to witness their king's happiness, they cheered like the world was ending and beginning all at once. When they finally broke apart, Theron kept his arm around her waist. I have an announcement, he said, his voice carrying through the sudden hush. Regarding the lords who sought to manipulate my choice of mate. Lord Blackwood went pale. You confused advice with control, Theron continued. You believed your bloodlines gave you the right to dictate my happiness. You were wrong. His amber eyes swept over the 5 men, cold and merciless. Your lands are forfeit. Your titles are suspended pending review. You will return to your estates and await my judgment. Your Majesty, one of them started. This is not a negotiation. The words were ice. You tried to take something precious from me. Be grateful I'm letting you keep your lives. The lords were escorted out in silence. Ivy watched them go, feeling no triumph, only a quiet satisfaction that justice had been served. Lady Victoria caught her eye as she turned to leave. For a moment, something ugly flickered across the noblewoman's face. Hatred, envy, the bitter knowledge of defeat. Then it was gone, replaced by a mask of cold dignity. Congratulations, Victoria said, her voice barely above a whisper. I hope you enjoy what you've stolen. I haven't stolen anything. Ivy held her gaze, steady and unafraid. He was never yours to lose. Victoria's mask cracked, just for an instant. Then she turned and swept from the hall, her mother's schemes in ruins around her. Ivy didn't watch her go. She turned back to Theron, to the warmth of his arm around her waist, to the future stretching out before them like an endless golden road. Dance with me, he murmured against her ear. There's no music? There will be. He was right. Within moments, musicians struck up a melody, and Theron swept her onto the floor. They danced as the court watched, as the celebration began around them, as the night deepened into something magical. I love you, he said softly, for her ears alone. I love you too. She smiled up at him, this ancient king who had asked her to stay every single day until she believed. Thank you for not giving up on me. Never. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. I would have asked you every day for 300 years if that's what it took. I know. She leaned into him, letting the music carry them. That's why I said yes. They danced until the stars began to fade. 2 years later, Ivy stood in her healing quarters, larger now, expanded to accommodate her growing work, watching her daughter sleep in the cradle by the window. Rose had her father's amber eyes and her mother's stubborn chin. She was 3 months old, and she had already wrapped the entire kingdom around her tiny fingers. Arms slipped around Ivy from behind, a familiar warmth pressing against her back. She's beautiful, Theron murmured. She's asleep. That's what matters. He laughed softly, pressing a kiss to her hair. The council is asking when we'll try for an heir. Rose is an heir. They mean a son. Ivy turned in his arms, raising an eyebrow. And what did you tell them? That my daughter will make a far better ruler than any son, and they can take their archaic succession laws and— He paused, glancing at the cradle. Well, I was colourful. She laughed, bright and free, the sound of a woman who had found exactly where she belonged. So much had changed. The frightened healer who had almost taken 200 gold pieces to disappear was gone. In her place stood a queen, confident, beloved, fierce in her protection of her people. She had established healing clinics across the kingdom, trained dozens of new healers, saved countless lives that would have been lost to noble indifference. And through it all, Theron had been beside her, asking her to stay, telling her she was enough, loving her with a devotion that still took her breath away. I have something for you, he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small pouch. Ivy's heart stuttered. Is that 200 gold pieces? He smiled, that rare, soft smile that was only ever for her. I bought them from the Ashworth estate when they sold off their assets last year. I thought you might want them. She took the pouch, feeling its weight in her palm. The same gold that had been meant to send her away. What am I supposed to do with this? Whatever you want. Keep it as a reminder. Donate it to your clinics. Throw it in the river. His amber eyes sparkled. I just liked the poetry of it. The gold that was supposed to make you leave, now yours to do with as you please. Ivy stared at him. This impossible man who had seen her when no one else would, who had asked her to stay until she finally believed she was worth staying for. I love you, she said. I love you more. Impossible. He kissed her, soft and sweet, while their daughter slept and the morning light streamed through the windows of the life they'd built together. She had been offered gold to leave. He had asked how much to make her stay. In the end, the answer had never been about gold at all. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new tale of fated mates, powerful kings, and love that conquers all. Leave a comment telling us your favorite moment, and we'll see you in the next story.